The wagon wheel cracked against a stone, jolting Theresa Hartford awake from the nightmare she had been living for 3 weeks straight. Her wrists burned from the rope that bound them, and her throat felt like sandpaper as the desert heat beat down on the canvas covering above. Through a gap in the fabric, she could see the endless expanse of Nevada territory stretching out in all directions, a sea of scrubland and distant mountains that offered no hope of escape or rescue. She was 20 years old, and she was cargo. The men who had taken her from the stagecoach attack near Carson City spoke in rough voices that made her skin crawl. They were outlaws, deserters from both sides of the war that had ended just 7 years ago in 1865, men who had forgotten what it meant to be human. They had killed the driver, the guard, and the elderly couple who had been her traveling companions. They had spared her for one reason only: she was young and could be sold. The wagon lurched to a stop, and Theresa heard boots hitting the ground. Her heart hammered in her chest as the canvas was pulled back, flooding the space with harsh sunlight that made her squint. "Get out," one of them said. His name was Garrett, and he was the leader. A scar ran from his left eye to his jaw, a memento from some past violence. "We are here." Theresa's legs trembled as she climbed down from the wagon. Her dress was torn and filthy, her dark blonde hair matted and tangled. They had reached what looked like a trading post, a ramshackle collection of buildings huddled together in the middle of nowhere. A faded sign read "Harmon Supply Station" in peeling paint. Several horses were tied outside, their saddles worn but well-maintained. Cowboys, she thought. Real ones, not the outlaws who had taken her. Maybe there was hope after all. Garrett grabbed her arm roughly and pulled her toward the main building. "Remember," he hissed in her ear, "you make trouble, we kill everyone here. Understand?" Theresa nodded, bell rising in her throat. She could not be responsible for more deaths. Inside, the trading post was dim and smelled of tobacco, leather, and coffee. Several men stood around a wooden counter where an older man with spectacles was tallying supplies. They all turned when Garrett and his 2 companions entered with Theresa. One man in particular caught her attention. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a brown leather vest over a blue work shirt, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. But it was not his appearance that struck her. It was the way his expression changed when he saw her bound wrists. His jaw tightened, and something dangerous flashed in those gray eyes. "We are here to trade," Garrett announced, shoving Theresa forward. She stumbled but caught herself against a barrel. The older man behind the counter, presumably Harmon, frowned. "What kind of trade are we talking about?" the girl for supplies. "We need ammunition, food, and whiskey. Enough for 3 men for 2 weeks. A shocked silence filled the room. The tall cowboy stepped forward, his hand resting near his gun. "You are trying to trade a person." "She is mine to trade," Garrett said with a shrug. "Found her fair and square." "That is not how the law works," another cowboy said, older with a graying beard. Garrett laughed. "Law? We are in the middle of nowhere. Closest sheriff is in Ukiah, 2 days' ride from here. By the time anyone found out, we would be long gone." Theresa found her voice cracked and weak as it was. "Please, they killed everyone on the stagecoach. They took me. I am not theirs to trade." The tall cowboy's eyes met hers, and she saw something she had not seen in weeks: compassion. He turned to Garrett. "How much supplies are you asking for?" "What are you doing, Wade?" the older cowboy asked. Wade. His name was Wade. Theresa committed it to memory, this man who might be her only chance. "Answering a question," Wade said calmly, never taking his eyes off Garrett. "How much?" Garrett grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. $50 worth. That is a fair price for a pretty thing like her." $50, Wade repeated. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Harmon, put together what they are asking for. I will pay. Wade Dalton, you cannot be serious, Harmon said. Put it together, Wade said, his voice harder now. And add it to my account. Theresa's mind reeled. He was going to buy her, trade for her like she was nothing more than a horse or a piece of furniture. Anger flared in her chest, but it was immediately doused by fear. What choice did she have? At least this Wade seemed like he had some shred of decency. It took 20 minutes for Harmon and his assistant to gather the supplies. During that time, Garrett and his men waited greedily, while Wade stood near Theresa. He did not speak to her, but she noticed how he positioned himself between her and the outlaws, a silent guardian. When the supplies were loaded onto the outlaw's wagon, Garrett reached for Theresa's rope. Wade's hand shot out, gripping the outlaw's wrist. I will take it from here. Garrett's eyes narrowed, wanting to sample the goods right away. Wade's expression did not change, but Theresa saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. Get your supplies and get out. For a moment, violence hung in the air like the smell of an approaching storm. Then Garrett laughed and released the rope. She is all yours, Cowboy. Enjoy. The three outlaws gathered their supplies and left, their laughter echoing even after the door closed behind them. Theresa stood frozen, the rope still binding her wrists, as the men in the trading post stared at her and Wade. Wade finally moved, pulling a knife from his belt. Theresa flinched and he froze. I am going to cut the rope, he said softly. I am not going to hurt you, she nodded, not trusting her voice. The knife was sharp and the rope fell away easily. Theresa gasped as blood rushed back into her hands, the pain making her dizzy. When did you last eat? Wade asked. I do not know. Yesterday, maybe. They gave me some hardtack. Wade turned to Harmon. Can you prepare some food, something easy on the stomach? I will have my wife put something together, Harmon said, still looking uncertain about the whole situation. Wade guided Theresa to a chair near a window. Sit down before you fall down. She sat, her legs giving out more than obeying. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the reality of the past weeks crashed over her. She had been kidnapped, watched people die, been treated like property, and now she had been traded like a sack of grain. Her hands started to shake, then her whole body. Shock, the older cowboy said. He had approached with a blanket which he draped over Theresa's shoulders despite the heat. I have seen it before. She needs rest and care. Wade crouched down in front of her, putting himself at eye level. What is your name? Theresa, she managed. Theresa Hartford. Miss Hartford, I am Wade Dalton. This is my foreman, Roy Miller. We work on a ranch about 5 miles from here. I know this has been terrible for you, and I am sorry I had to trade supplies for you like you were not a person. But those men would not have let you go any other way, and if I had tried to fight them, people might have died. Theresa nodded. She understood the logic, even if it made her feel hollow inside. I want to make something clear to you right now, Wade continued, his voice steady and sincere. You are not my property. You are not a slave or a servant or anything else like that. I paid for supplies, not for you. You are a free person. Then what happens to me now? Theresa asked, her voice breaking. That is your choice. We can take you to Ukiah. There is a sheriff there, some good people. They can help you contact your family or get you where you need to go. Or if you do not want to travel right away, my ranch has space. My aunt lives there, acts as housekeeper. You could stay until you are ready to decide what is next, but it is your choice. I am giving you a choice. Theresa stared at him. A choice. When was the last time someone had given her a choice? Before the attack, she had been traveling to Sacramento to live with her uncle after her parents died of fever. Now, her uncle probably thought she was dead. She had no money, No belongings except the ruined dress on her back and no real destination. "If I came to your ranch," she said slowly, "what would you expect from me?" Wade's brow furrowed. "Expect? You paid $50 worth of supplies for me. That is not a small amount." "What would I owe you?" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked like anger but not at her. "You would owe me nothing. If you wanted to help my aunt with chores, that would be your choice, but you would not be required to do anything. You could rest, recover, and figure out your next step. That is all." "Why?" the question burst out of her. "Why would you do that? You do not know me." Wade was quiet for a moment, then stood. He walked to the window, looking out at the harsh Nevada landscape. 5 years ago, my sister Mary made a trip to visit friends in Virginia City. Her stagecoach was attacked. They found her body 3 days later. He turned back to Theresa, and she saw old pain in his eyes. She was 19. "If someone had been there, if someone could have saved her, I would want them to. I cannot change what happened to Mary, but I can help you. That is reason enough for me." Theresa felt tears slip down her cheeks, the first she had allowed herself since the attack. This stranger was offering her kindness without wanting anything in return, and she did not know how to process it. Harmon's wife, a plump woman with kind eyes, appeared with a tray. On it was a bowl of broth, some bread, and a cup of water. "You poor dear," she said, setting the tray on a small table next to Theresa. "Eat slowly now. Your stomach needs to adjust." Theresa picked up the spoon with shaking hands and tasted the broth. It was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted, warm and salty and real. She forced herself to eat slowly. Even though she wanted to gulp it all down, while she ate, she could hear Wade and Roy talking in low voices near the counter. They were discussing the ranch, something about cattle and fences. Normal things. The mundanity of it was almost surreal after weeks of terror. When she finished eating, Wade returned. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Thank you for the food." "Miss Hartford, I need your decision. It is getting late in the day and we have a ride ahead of us if we are going to the ranch. If you want to go to Ukiah instead, we will need to stay here tonight and leave at first light." Theresa thought about it. Ukiah meant the law, meant having to tell her story over and over. It meant being alone among strangers. The ranch meant staying with Wade, this man who had shown her more kindness in an hour than she had experienced in weeks. His aunt would be there, another woman. It would not be improper, but more than that, something in her wanted to trust him. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was instinct, but she felt that Wade Dalton was a good man. "I will come to the ranch," she said. "At least for a little while." Relief crossed Wade's face. "All right, Roy, we will need to get Miss Hartford something to wear. That dress is not going to work for riding." It took another hour to get everything arranged. Mrs. Harmon found some clothes that had been left behind by a previous traveler, men's trousers and a work shirt. They were too big for Theresa, but Mrs. Harmon pinned them to fit well enough. Theresa changed in a back room, catching sight of herself in a small mirror. She looked like a ghost, pale and hollow-eyed. But at least she was clean. Mrs. Harmon had given her water and soap to wash with. When she emerged, Wade had a horse ready. It was a gentle-looking mare, brown with a white blaze on her forehead. "This is Daisy," Wade said. "She is the calmest horse we have. Do you know how to ride?" "A little. My father taught me when I was young." "That will do. It is not a long ride and Daisy will follow my horse." Roy had already left, saying he needed to get back to check on the men. Wade helped Theresa mount, his hands careful and respectful. Then he swung up onto his own horse, a tall black gelding. As they rode away from the trading post, Theresa felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. The air was still hot, but there was a hint of the coolness that would come with evening. Wade rode beside her, not pushing the pace, letting the horses walk easily. After a while, he spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "What were you doing on that stage coach? Where were you headed?" Theresa gripped the reins tighter. "My parents died 6 months ago. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I had been living in a boarding house in Carson City, trying to figure out what to do. My uncle wrote and said I could come live with him in Sacramento. He is my mother's brother. He was going to help me find a teaching position." "You are a teacher." "I was studying to be one. I like children. I like books." She paused. "That all seems so far away now. It does not have to be. You can still have that life." "Can I?" Theresa turned to look at him. "Those men murdered innocent people. They took me and treated me like an animal. How do I go back to normal after that?" Wade was quiet for a long moment. "I do not think you go back. I think you go forward. What happened to you was terrible and wrong, but it does not have to define the rest of your life. You are stronger than you know, Miss Hartford. You survived. That counts for something." Theresa wanted to believe him, but the darkness that had settled into her heart over the past weeks felt permanent. Still, his words were kind, and she appreciated them. They rode in companionable silence for a while. The landscape slowly began to change, the desert scrub giving way to grassland. In the distance, Theresa could see hills and trees, signs of water and life. "The ranch is just beyond those hills," Wade said, pointing. "It is called the Three Rivers Ranch. My father started it 20 years ago. When he died, it passed to me and my brother." "You have a brother, William." "He is 27, 3 years older than me. He handles most of the business side of things while I manage the cattle and the men. We make a good team." As they crested a hill, Theresa saw the ranch spread out below them. It was larger than she had expected, with a main house, a barn, several outbuildings and corrals. Cattle dotted the fields, and she could see several men working near the barn. "It is beautiful," she said, and meant it. "It is home," Wade replied, and she could hear the love in his voice. They rode down to the main house, a sprawling structure made of wood and stone. It looked solid and permanent, like it had grown out of the land itself. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was in her 50s, with graying brown hair pulled back in a bun and a face that was stern but not unkind. When she saw Theresa, her expression shifted to concern. "Wade, what is going on?" she asked as they dismounted. "Aunt Clara, this is Miss Theresa Hartford. She has had a terrible experience and she will be staying with us for a while. Miss Hartford, this is my Aunt Clara Dalton." Clara's sharp eyes took in Theresa's appearance, the two large clothes, the exhaustion in her face. "Come inside, child. You look like you are about to fall over." Theresa found herself being ushered into the house before she could respond. The interior was warm and welcoming, with wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and the smell of something cooking. Clara led her to a chair in the kitchen and pressed a glass of cool water into her hands. "Wade, you go tend to the horses. I will take care of Miss Hartford," Clara said in a tone that brooked no argument. Wade nodded and left, though Theresa noticed he glanced back at her before going. Once they were alone, Clara sat down across from Theresa. "Now, you do not have to tell me everything right now, but I need to know the basics. Are you hurt? Do you need a doctor?" "I am bruised and sore, but nothing is broken," Theresa said. They did not touch me that way. They were saving me to sell." Clara's expression hardened. "I see. And Wade bought you from them. He traded supplies for me. Then he told me I was free, that I could choose where to go. I chose to come here." "Good. That was smart. Wade is a good man, one of the best I know. You will be safe here." Clara stood. "Let me show you to a room. You can rest, and later we will have dinner." Tomorrow we can figure out what you need." The room Clara showed her to was small but clean, with a real bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the fields. There was even a quilt on the bed, hand-stitched in a pattern of blues and greens. "This was Mary's room," Clara said softly. "Wade's sister. I think she would have liked you using it." Theresa felt a lump in her throat. "Wade told me about her. I am so sorry, so am I, but we keep living because that is what Mary would have wanted." Clara patted Theresa's shoulder. "Rest now. I will call you for dinner." After Clara left, Theresa sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the quilt. She thought about Mary, about Wade's pain when he mentioned her. She thought about her own parents, gone too soon. She thought about the past weeks and how close she had come to losing everything. Then she lay down, and despite everything, she felt safe for the first time since the attack. The bed was soft, the room was quiet, and outside she could hear the normal sounds of ranch life. She closed her eyes and let herself drift. When Clara called her for dinner, the sun had set and the house was lit with oil lamps. Theresa washed her face and hands and made her way to the dining room. The table was set for 4, and Wade was already there, along with a man who looked enough like him to be his brother. "Miss Hartford, this is my brother William," Wade said, standing when she entered. William stood as well, offering a polite nod. He was taller than Wade, with lighter hair and blue eyes instead of gray. "Miss Hartford, you are welcome in our home." "Thank you," Theresa said, taking the seat Clara indicated. Dinner was roast beef with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. It was more food than Theresa had seen in weeks. The conversation was light, mostly about ranch business. No one asked her about what had happened, and she was grateful for that. She was not ready to talk about it in detail yet. After dinner, Wade walked her back to her room. "If you need anything, Clara's room is just down the hall. William and I have rooms on the other side of the house." "Thank you," Theresa said, "for everything. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not have to repay me," Wade said gently. "Just get better, that is enough." He bid her good night and left. Theresa changed into a nightgown Clara had left for her and crawled into bed. For the first time in weeks, she felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. The next few days passed in a blur of rest and recovery. Clara fussed over Theresa, making sure she ate regular meals and got plenty of sleep. Theresa helped with small tasks around the house, washing dishes or folding laundry, needing to feel useful. Wade was often out working with the cattle, but she saw him at meals. He always asked how she was doing, always listened when she spoke. There was something steady about him, something that made her feel grounded. On the 4th day, Theresa felt strong enough to go outside. She walked around the ranch, taking in the vastness of it all. She found Wade near the barn, working with a young horse. "He is beautiful," she said, approaching slowly so as not to startle the animal. Wade looked up and smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his face. "This is Thunder. He is 2 years old, and I am training him. Want to watch? I would like that." She sat on the fence and watched as Wade worked with Thunder. He was patient and gentle, never raising his voice or forcing the horse to do anything. He moved with a natural grace that spoke of years of experience. "You are good at this," Theresa said when he took a break. "I love horses. I always have. When I was a boy, I spent more time in the barn than in the house. My mother used to joke that I would turn into a horse myself one day. Tell me about her, your mother." Wade's expression softened. "She was from Boston originally. Came west with my father when they married. She hated it at first, the roughness, the isolation, but she fell in love with the land eventually. She was strong and kind, and she made our house a home. She died when I was 16. Pneumonia took her one winter." "I am sorry, it sounds like she was wonderful." "She was." Wade studied Theresa. "What about your parents?" "My father was a clerk. My mother was a seamstress. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. They loved each other deeply. When my father got sick, my mother nursed him day and night. But she caught the fever too, and they both died within days of each other. I think my mother could not bear to live without him." "Love like that is rare," Wade said. "Did you ever come close to that kind of love?" Wade was quiet for a moment. "Once. Her name was Ellen. We grew up together, and I thought we would get married. But she fell in love with a banker from San Francisco. She married him and moved away. I was hurt at the time, but I realize now that we would not have been happy together. She wanted city life, and I could never leave this ranch." "Do you think you will ever marry?" "I hope so. I want a family, children, but it has to be the right person, someone who loves this life as much as I do." Theresa felt a strange flutter in her chest at his words. She pushed it away. It was too soon, too complicated. She was still healing from trauma, and Wade was simply being kind. But over the next few weeks, that flutter became harder to ignore. Wade sought her out, talking with her during meals, inviting her to watch him work. He taught her more about horses, showed her around the ranch. He was respectful and careful, never pushing her, but she could feel something growing between them. One evening, about 3 weeks after she had arrived, Wade invited her to take a ride to watch the sunset. They rode to a hill overlooking the ranch, and as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, Wade turned to her. "Theresa, I have to be honest with you about something." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "When I first saw you at the trading post, I felt something. I told myself it was just compassion, that I was helping because of Mary. But the more time I spend with you, the more I realize that it is more than that. I care about you. I am falling in love with you." Theresa's breath caught. She had felt it too, but hearing him say it made it real. "Wade, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything right now. I know you have been through hell. I know you need time to heal. I am not asking you to love me back or to make any decisions. I just needed you to know how I feel, and I need you to know that my offer still stands. If you want to leave, go to Sacramento or anywhere else, I will help you. I am not trying to trap you here." Theresa looked at him, this man who had saved her, who had given her a choice, who had been nothing but kind and patient. She thought about how safe she felt with him, how his smile made her heart lighter, how she looked forward to seeing him each day. "I think I am falling in love with you too," she said softly. "But I am scared. What if I am just confused because you rescued me? What if this is not real?" Wade reached out and took her hand, the first time he had done more than offer an arm for support. His hand was warm and calloused and strong. "Then we take our time. We figure it out together. There is no rush." Theresa squeezed his hand. "Thank you for understanding." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, hand in hand, and Theresa felt something she had thought she would never feel again: hope for the future. The weeks turned into months. Theresa continued to heal, both physically and emotionally. The nightmares became less frequent. She laughed more. She helped Clara with the house and even started teaching some of the ranch hands to read in the evenings. Many of them had never had the opportunity to learn, and they were eager students. Wade courted her properly, with Clara acting as chaperone. They took rides together, had picnics, talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the herd, about maybe raising horses as well as cattle. She told him about her love of books, about wanting to make a difference in the world, about the fear that still sometimes gripped her in the night. William warmed to her as well, treating her like the sister he had lost. Clara became a mother figure, teaching her to cook ranch meals and telling her stories about Wade and William as boys. 4 months after Theresa had arrived at the ranch, Wade proposed. It was simple and perfect. They were in the barn, and Wade was showing her a new foal that had been born that morning. The tiny creature was all legs and big eyes, nuzzling against its mother. "Life is amazing," Wade said, watching the foal. "How it keeps going, how new things are born even when bad things happen." "It is," Theresa agreed. Wade turned to her. "I want to make a life with you, Theresa. I want to marry you, have children with you, grow old with you on this ranch. Will you marry me?" Theresa felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Wade pulled her into his arms and kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he was grinning. "I do not have a ring yet. I wanted to wait until you said yes before I went to Ukiah to get one." "I do not need a ring to know this is real," Theresa said. But Wade insisted, and 2 days later he rode to Ukiah and returned with a simple gold band with a small diamond. It fit perfectly. They were married a month later in the late fall of 1872. The ceremony was held at the ranch, with a traveling preacher officiating. The ranch hands attended, along with neighbors from surrounding properties. Mrs. Harmon and her husband came from the trading post. Even the sheriff from Ukiah attended, having heard the story of Theresa's rescue and wanting to meet the couple. Theresa wore a dress that Clara had made, pale blue with white lace. Wade wore his best suit. As they exchanged vows, Theresa thought about how far she had come. From that terrified girl in the back of an outlaw's wagon to this woman standing before the man she loved, promising to spend her life with him. Their wedding night was tender and careful. Wade was patient with Theresa, mindful of her past trauma. He let her set the pace, and when they finally came together, it was beautiful and right. The first year of their marriage was full of adjustments and joys. Theresa learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings and hard work. She continued teaching the ranch hands and started a small school for the children of neighboring ranches. Wade built her a schoolhouse, a small building near the main house where she could teach. In the spring of 1873, Theresa discovered she was pregnant. Wade was overjoyed, already planning for the child's future. Clara fussed over Theresa, making sure she was not working too hard. The pregnancy was not easy. Theresa was sick for the first few months, and the Nevada heat made the later months uncomfortable. But Wade was attentive, rubbing her swollen feet at night, bringing her cool water during the day, reading to her when she was too tired to move. In December of 1873, their first child was born. It was a long, difficult labor that terrified Wade. He paced outside the bedroom where Clara and a midwife attended to Theresa, convinced something would go wrong. But when he finally heard the baby's cry, he nearly collapsed with relief. "You can come in now," Clara called. Wade entered to find Theresa propped up in bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. "We have a son," she said. Wade approached carefully, looking down at the red-faced, squalling infant. His son. His and Theresa's son. Love flooded through him so intensely it hurt. "What should we name him?" Theresa asked. They had discussed names but had not decided. Wade thought about his father who had built this ranch. Thomas Wade Dalton." "Thomas," Theresa repeated, smiling. "I love it." Baby Thomas was healthy and strong-lunged, keeping the entire household awake for the first few months. But no one minded. Even William, who had claimed he had no interest in children, was often found holding his nephew, making silly faces to get him to smile. As Thomas grew, so did the ranch. Wade expanded the herd as he had dreamed, and they began raising horses as well. The ranch became known throughout Nevada for quality cattle and well-trained horses. Theresa's school grew too, with children coming from as far as 10 miles away to learn. In 1875, They had a second child, a daughter they named Catherine Mary, after Wade's mother and sister. Catherine was quieter than Thomas had been, with Theresa's green eyes and Wade's dark hair. Wade doted on his daughter, and Theresa often joked that he was too soft with her. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. The nightmares that had once plagued Theresa faded almost entirely. Sometimes she would wake in the night, heart pounding, thinking she was back in that wagon. But then Wade would be there, holding her, reminding her she was safe. And she was. She had built a life beyond what she could have imagined in those dark days. In 1877, they had a third child, another son they named James. He was born in the middle of a spring thunderstorm, as if announcing his arrival to the world with drama. James was a wild child, always getting into things, keeping Theresa on her toes. The ranch continued to prosper. William married a woman named Sarah from Virginia City, and they had children of their own. The main house was expanded to accommodate the growing family. Clara remained the heart of the household, loving her grand-nieces and grand-nephews fiercely. One evening in the summer of 1879, Wade and Theresa sat on the porch, watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was 5 and trying to teach Catherine, who was 4, how to skip rocks in the water trough. James, 2 years old, was toddling after them, determined to keep up with his older siblings. "You ever think about that day at the trading post?" Wade asked. Theresa was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, but not with fear anymore. I think about how it led me here to this life. I would not choose to go through it again, but I cannot regret where it brought me." Wade took her hand. "I offered you a choice that day. You could have gone to Ukiah, started a different life. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had chosen differently?" "No," Theresa said firmly. "I chose you, and it was the best choice I ever made. You gave me back my life, Wade. You gave me love and safety and a family. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Wade said. "I was just going through the motions before you came. Now I feel alive." They sat in comfortable silence, hands entwined, watching their children. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. In the distance, cattle lowed. Somewhere in the barn, a horse whinnied. It was an ordinary evening on an ordinary day, and it was perfect. As the years passed, the children grew. Thomas showed an aptitude for ranching, learning everything he could from Wade. Catherine loved the horses and had a natural way with them. James was the scholar, always reading, always asking questions. Theresa tutored him herself, recognizing a kindred spirit. In 1881, tragedy struck when Clara passed away peacefully in her sleep. The family mourned her deeply, but they took comfort in knowing she had lived a full life and had been surrounded by love. They buried her next to Wade's parents and Mary on a hill overlooking the ranch. The loss of Clara brought the family even closer together. Sarah, William's wife, took over more of the household duties, and Theresa helped her. The two women became close friends, raising their children together. In 1883, Theresa gave birth to their fourth and final child, a daughter they named Clara, after Wade's aunt. She was a surprise, as Theresa had thought she was done having children at 35. But little Clara was a joy, a happy baby who seemed to bring sunshine wherever she went. The ranch continued to grow. Wade and William bought additional land, expanding their holdings. They hired more men, built more structures. The Three Rivers Ranch became one of the most successful operations in Nevada. Theresa's school became an official institution, with the county providing some funding. She hired an assistant teacher, a young woman from Ukiah, to help with the growing number of students. Education became Theresa's passion, and she was known throughout the region as someone who truly cared about children's futures. In 1890, Thomas, now 17, fell in love with a neighbor's daughter. Wade and Theresa liked her, a sensible girl named Rebecca who was not afraid of hard work. They married the following year, and Thomas brought his bride to live on the ranch. Wade built them a house on the property, starting what he hoped would be a tradition of the family staying together. Catherine, at 16, announced that she wanted to train horses professionally. Wade was thrilled, and together they started a breeding program that focused on quality over quantity. Catherine had a gift, and soon people were coming from all over Nevada and even California to buy horses trained by Catherine Dalton. James, at 14, surprised no one when he said he wanted to be a lawyer. Theresa and Wade sent him to school in San Francisco, knowing it was the best thing for him even though they missed him terribly. Little Clara, now 7, was still figuring out who she was, but she showed signs of having her mother's love of teaching. In 1895, Thomas and Rebecca had a son, making Wade and Theresa grandparents for the first time. Wade held his grandson, another boy named after him, and felt the circle of life continuing. He was 45 years old, and he had built something that would last beyond him. One evening that year, Wade and Theresa took a ride to the hill where they had watched the sunset all those years ago when Wade had first confessed his feelings. They were older now, with threads of gray in their hair and lines on their faces, but they still loved each other as deeply as ever. 23 years, Theresa said. It has been 23 years since you gave me a choice. The best 23 years of my life, Wade said. Mine too. Theresa leaned against him. Do you remember how scared I was, how broken I felt? I remember. But I also remember seeing the strength in you even then. You just needed a chance to heal. You gave me that chance. You gave me everything, Wade. A home, a family, a purpose. I went from being cargo to being cherished. That is a miracle. Wade kissed her forehead. You were always worthy of being cherished. I just helped you see it. They watched the sunset, just as they had done countless times before. The land stretched out before them, the ranch they had built together, the life they had created. It was not always easy ranching in Nevada. There were droughts and harsh winters, sick animals and financial worries, but they had faced everything together. I want you to know something, Theresa said. If I had to do it all again, if I had to go through everything I went through to end up here with you, I would, in a heartbeat. Wade tightened his arm around her. I love you, Theresa Dalton. I love you too, Wade Dalton. Always. The years continued to roll forward. James became a successful lawyer in San Francisco but came home often, eventually marrying a woman he met there and bringing her to meet the family. Catherine married a rancher from a neighboring property, and they combined their operations, creating an even larger horse breeding program. Little Clara did indeed become a teacher, taking over Theresa's school when Theresa decided to retire at 50. In 1900, at the turn of the century, the entire family gathered at the Three Rivers Ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled the house and the yard. There were 12 grandchildren now, with more on the way. Wade and Theresa, both in their early 50s, looked around at the family they had created and felt overwhelming gratitude. William stood up to make a toast. To my brother Wade and my sister Theresa. 28 years ago, you found each other in the most unlikely way. You took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful. You built this family, this legacy. We are all here because of your love and your strength. To Wade and Theresa, to Wade and Theresa. Everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Wade looked at Theresa and she looked back at him. No words were needed. Everything they felt was in that look. That night, after everyone had gone to bed or to their own homes, Wade and Theresa sat on the porch as they often did. The stars were bright overhead and a gentle breeze cooled the summer air. "It is a good life," Wade said. "It is the best life," Theresa corrected. "You ever wish for anything different?" Theresa thought about it. "Sometimes I wish I could have known my parents lived to see this, to see what I made of my life. But other than that, no. This is everything I ever wanted and more." Wade nodded. "I feel the same. Although I do wish Mary could have known you, you two would have been good friends." "I think she knows," Theresa said softly. "I think she is watching over us." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped together as they had been for nearly 3 decades. The ranch was quiet around them, everyone safe and accounted for. The cattle were in their pastures, the horses in their corrals. The children and grandchildren were tucked into their beds. Wade thought back to that day at Harmon's trading post, when he had seen a frightened young woman being traded like property. He had acted on instinct, driven by the memory of his sister, and the basic human decency his parents had instilled in him. He had given Theresa a choice, never expecting that choice would lead to this moment. Theresa thought back to that same day, when she had been at her lowest point, convinced her life was over. This cowboy had given her not just freedom, but hope. He had shown her that kindness still existed in the world. When he had offered her a choice, she had taken a leap of faith in choosing to stay. That leap had carried her to heights she never could have imagined. "Thank you," Theresa said suddenly. "For what? For seeing me. For saving me. For loving me." "Thank you for choosing me," Wade replied. "For building this life with me." "I would choose you every time," Theresa said, "and I would save you every time." They kissed, a soft, gentle kiss that spoke of years of love and commitment. Then they sat together under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds and had built something lasting and true. The years ahead would bring more changes. More grandchildren would be born. The ranch would continue to evolve and grow. Wade and Theresa would face challenges and celebrations, losses and gains. But through it all, they would face it together, their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. In 1910, on their 38th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a party. The house was decorated with flowers, and there was a huge meal prepared. At the end of the evening, Catherine stood up to speak. "Mom and Dad, you have shown all of us what real love looks like. Not the easy, fairy tale kind, but the kind that endures through hardship and pain. Mom, you were given a choice all those years ago and you chose to stay with Dad. That choice gave us all life. We are here because you were brave enough to choose love over fear. Thank you for that. Thank you for everything." Theresa was crying and Wade was not far from tears himself. They were 60 and 58 respectively, and they had lived more than they had ever hoped. As the party wound down and people left, Wade and Theresa found themselves alone again on the porch. It was their place, where they had shared so many conversations and quiet moments over the years. 60 years old, Wade mused. When did that happen? Time moved while we were busy living, Theresa said with a smile. Do you have any regrets? Not a single one. You. Only that I did not have more years with you. However many we get will never be enough. Theresa leaned her head on his shoulder. Then we will just have to make the most of the time we have. And they did. Wade and Theresa continued to live full, active lives. They became great-grandparents, delighting in the new generation. They traveled a bit, taking a train to San Francisco to visit James, even going to the ocean for the first time. Theresa had never seen the Pacific, and she stood on the beach with tears running down her face, overwhelmed by the beauty and vastness of it. But they always returned to the ranch. It was their heart, their home, the place where their love had grown and flourished. In 1915, Wade's health began to decline. He was 65 and had worked hard his entire life. His body was wearing out, but his spirit remained strong and his love for Theresa never wavered. She nursed him tenderly, just as she had promised in their wedding vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. One evening in late summer, Wade knew his time was coming. He asked Theresa to help him out to the porch. She did, supporting his weight as he walked slowly. They sat together, watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before. "I am not afraid," Wade said. "I know," Theresa replied, her voice thick with tears. "I have lived a good life, a life full of love and purpose. You gave me that, Theresa. We gave it to each other." Wade took her hand, his grip weaker than it once was but still warm. "I will wait for you, on the other side, however long it takes." "Do not wait too long," Theresa said, trying to smile through her tears. "I cannot imagine eternity without you. You will have our children and grandchildren to keep you company. They will take care of you. I know they will, but they are not you." Wade turned to look at her, memorizing her face. She was 73, with white hair and a face lined by years of laughter and sun. To him, she was still the most beautiful woman in the world. "I love you, Theresa Hartford Dalton. Loving you has been the greatest honor of my life." "I love you, Wade Dalton. Thank you for giving me a choice all those years ago, and thank you for every day since." They sat together as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and orange and purple. When the stars began to appear, Wade closed his eyes and slipped peacefully away, Theresa holding his hand. The funeral was huge, with people coming from all over Nevada to pay their respects. Wade Dalton had been a pillar of the community, known for his integrity and kindness. But for Theresa, the loss was nearly unbearable. Wade had been her partner, her love, her best friend for over 40 years. The world felt dimmer without him in it, but she had her family, and they rallied around her. Thomas took over full management of the ranch. Catherine stayed close, visiting every day. James took a leave from his law practice in San Francisco to be with his mother. Even little Clara, now a grown woman with children of her own, moved back into the main house for a while to keep Theresa company. Slowly, Theresa found her footing again. She knew Wade would not want her to spend the rest of her days in mourning. She continued to be active in the community, helped with her great-grandchildren, and even did some teaching again, tutoring children who were struggling. She lived for another 8 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1923 at the age of 81. Her last words, spoken to Catherine, who was sitting with her, were simple. "Tell your father I am coming home." They buried her next to Wade on the hill overlooking the ranch. The entire family gathered, now spanning 4 generations. Thomas, as the eldest, spoke at the service. "Our mother was one of the strongest people I have ever known. She survived things that would have broken most people. She took the worst experience of her life and refused to let it define her. Instead, she chose love. She chose our father. She chose this life. And in doing so, she gave us all an incredible gift. She showed us that no matter how dark things get, there is always hope. There is always the possibility of a new beginning. Mom and Dad loved each other deeply, and that love created all of this." He gestured to the assembled family. "They are together again now, and I know they are at peace." As the sun set over the Three Rivers Ranch that evening, the family gathered in the main house. Children ran through the rooms where Theresa had raised her own children. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren shared memories. The house was full of life and love and laughter. And on the hill, 2 headstones stood side by side. Wade Dalton, 1847 to 1915, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He gave her a choice, Theresa Hartford Dalton. 1842 to 1923, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. She chose love. The ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But it all began with a choice made in 1872, when a frightened young woman decided to trust a kind cowboy who had given her freedom. That choice rippled forward through time, creating a legacy of love that would endure for generations. The story of Wade and Theresa became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It was a reminder that love can be found in the darkest places, that kindness matters, that giving someone a choice is the most powerful gift of all. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. And somewhere beyond the stars, Wade and Theresa danced together again. Forever young, forever in love, their story complete but never ending. They had taken a moment of darkness and turned it into a lifetime of light. They had chosen each other, and that choice had made all the difference.